start by telling you a couple of things that you should bear in mind. Firstly, if you are wanting to tweet and talk about this virtual week, you're very welcome to do that. You can do that using the hashtag at AgriFood Africa. You can see it there on the screen. And let me just also highlight the networking events that we're running throughout the week. There's a couple of sessions that you can, there's 3 sessions you can attend. And I think you'll be well served if you do that. So the way to do that is go to Meeting Mojo and register that way, and then you can join the session and network with other people that may be wanting to collaborate with you. So I'd recommend doing that. The other thing to bear in mind is we have our pitching competition on Wednesday afternoon. Do come along to that. We've had some great entries in past weeks, and I think you'll be very interested about some of the things that people are up to, and it'll give you opportunities to find out more about different companies. If you do still want to participate in that, you've got deadlines tomorrow, so you need to get a wiggle on, but you should be able to do that. It's a couple of minutes of your time that you need to present for. Just on another note as well, we've had to cancel Wednesday morning session. You'll get an email about that shortly, but one of the speakers was unable to attend, and so we thought it best to do that, but details will be forthcoming. Let me just explain how we're going to run today's session. So we're going to have a couple of pre-recorded talks. You can see here the agenda on screen. So we've got the Innovation Awards by Debbie Tully, who works for the KTN, and Miller joining us as well. She'll be telling us about the Agri-Tech Catalyst Round 10 in greater detail. And then she's also be talking about, we've also got Richard talking to us about knowledge transfer partnerships. Apologies, that's incorrect there. So we're looking forward to the session. I think you'll find it very useful. So let's play these presentations, and if you have questions, we'll take those from the presenters at the end of the session.
Good morning, my name is Debbie Tully, and I'm a Knowledge Transfer Manager in the Agri-Food team here at KTN. Today I'm going to run through some detail on the GCRF AgriFood Africa Innovation Awards. In total, and as part of the GCRF AgriFood Africa project, we have £800,000 to support up to 20 project awards. These awards are to encourage collaboration between the UK and Africa and are pump priming, so the aim being for the successful projects to go into bigger funding applications in the future. And specifically, there must be a UK research partner, so a university or a research technology organisation, and an African partner, an industry partner, although some RTOs will be eligible. And importantly, the focus is to address key agri-food challenges in Africa. So the type of research these awards are encouraging are feasibility studies, industrial research studies, projects that focus on improving adoption or investment of technologies, products and services in the African agricultural sector. So round 1 has taken place and was announced as the GCRF AgriFood Africa project began back in December 2019. We received 34 applications in total, and 13 grants were awarded at £40,000 each. The time parameters have changed slightly. This is in light of the COVID situation with some understandable delays. However, we do anticipate that all projects will complete by the end of November 2021. And at the core, these projects align with ODA guidelines and look to encourage economic development and welfare in Africa. Just to elaborate a wee bit more on the scope for these awards, we were looking for projects that address challenges in primary crop and livestock production, including aquaculture. Looking at projects which could improve the availability, the yield and supply of safe and nutritious foods, and support challenges on the logistical side of things, and importantly help add value wherever possible throughout the supply. And here are the 13 successful projects from round 1. A balanced portfolio addressing some major environmental, economical and sustainability challenges that are out there. We will shortly be hearing from one of the projects on their progress. So the good news is we will be announcing the Innovation Awards Round 2 later this year. The scope and eligibility will be similar to Round 1, and currently we're looking to fund up to 8 projects at £40,000 each. Within the £40,000, there will be £5,000 ring fence, and that is for travel to and from Africa. I have included the link if you would like more information on the awards, and an email address. If you have any questions at all that you would like to direct to us, please do so. We're very happy to help. That's pretty much it from myself. I'm now going to introduce you to Ben Bennett from the Greenwich University, who is going to share detail on his project and progress from Round 1, and I'll leave you there. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi everybody, my name is Professor Ben Bennett. I'm Deputy Director of the Natural Resources Institute at the University of Greenwich, and I'm the PI for the project Cassava Bags for Improved Gari Making Efficiency, CB4G. And this is our short progress report on the project as far as we have got so far. So those of you that don't know what cassava is there anybody out there that doesn't know what cassava is? I'd be very surprised. The lady here is carrying a big pile of heavy, wet cassava roots on her head. Cassava is a crucial staple food ingredient across the central humid belts, particularly of Africa, but especially in Nigeria. And gari is the fermented and dried and roasted instant porridge products that you see being made by the lady in the bottom left. This project aims to try to improve the efficiency of gari making using the fresh cassava you saw in the picture on the previous page in West Africa, particularly where gari is a staple food for hundreds of thousands of people. And there are traditionally it's made by small-scale gari makers who are almost university women and who run very small businesses like the one you've just seen, roasting gari. They buy in fresh gari and they sell. They buy in fresh cassava and they sell gari. So the challenge that they face is, if you look at the picture on the right, that is a piece of cassava root that started to have post-harvest physical deterioration. So within 72 hours of pulling cassava out of the ground, it's turned into this rather unpleasant, mushy-like substance. The wild cassava's got very many advantages. One of its drawbacks is it's got a very short shelf life. So our plan is to try to work with gari making SMEs to re-engineer the supply of fresh cassava into their system using a polypropylene bag approach, which we've been developing for the last couple of years under a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. This polypropylene bag is called Cassava Bag. We proved that it works at half-ton scale. We think it can be engineered to work for small gari processors to increase the shelf life of fresh cassava, allow them to stock cassava for up to 8 days. And we think this might give them a better return on the cassava that they buy, because you retain more starch. You can store it without deterioration, but it also will allow better management of the supply chains of their business. That's the premises behind this project. The partnership consists of the Natural Resources Institute, which is part of the University of Greenwich in the UK, and the University of Agriculture in Abeokuta, Funab in southeast Nigeria, and Benue State University, which is in the south central to western bit of Nigeria. Gari producer groups, some of which we've already identified, some of which we need to identify, and a bag making company who's been working with us on the larger bag. So where is the project? The Natural Resources Institute is based in the Medway campus in Kent, in the southeast of England. FUNAB is in Abeokuta, which is in the southeast, down there towards Lagos. And Benway State University is in Makurdi, all the way over here towards the southeast, south central east, shall we say. These partners have been chosen because they sit squarely in what you might call the Gari belt of southern Nigeria, where there are tens of millions of Gari consumers and hundreds of thousands of Gari makers. So these dark red areas on this map are areas of concentration of both production and demand for Gari, and are two areas for developing a Gari network. So what's the concept? As I've said, Gari roots deteriorate after 72 hours, whereas the bag extends their shelf life from 72 hours to 8 days. The bag convinces the roots that you see this lady carrying on the left-hand side that they're still in the ground by increasing the temptation in the temperature and humidity around the root. So instead of deteriorating, or the chemistry of deterioration starting, it stays relatively dormant for 8 days and then starts to deteriorate. Almost universally across Africa, Gari is a cottage industry. There are a few larger companies emerging, but I would say 99% of Gari is made by people like the picture you saw at the beginning, individuals or groups of individuals who roast, who process and roast Gari, and then sell it on to Gari middlemen who take it to big cities. So our argument is that if I'm a Gari maker and I can buy in fresh cassava in larger quantity, I'll get it at a better price, and I'll be able to store it if I don't use it and keep it until the next day or the day after that. And we also have evidence that by using the technology, stored cassava keeps its starch for longer. And if you have a higher starch level in cassava, you get more Gari per kilogram of fresh root. So that ratio between fresh root in and Gari out is very important to the bottom line. So the deliverables in this project were a scoping of Gari making business models in the target area, and to develop a new business model based on the smaller cassava bag, to set up prototype, drawing on the cassava bag for a new Gari cassava bag product, and to develop a consortium around bringing that product to the market along with a bag maker. And to do that, we need to start to build a network of Gari making SMEs who can trial and test the new bag technology and optimize it. We also included in this relatively small project a certain amount of effort to do field trials, and we wanted to gather all these people together in a symposium with all the different stakeholders to try to understand the various moving parts of a Gari maker's cassava bag, and to build out of that a new cassava bag network who could provide enough demand to make it interesting for the bag maker to start commercially. So that's what it's all about. So progress to date, we've signed up our partners. We've been developing the research questions and the fieldwork plans, but we haven't been able to have the kickoff meetings because our partners are in universities and they've got some similar challenges to ours with the shutdown. We're about to have the virtual kickoff meeting, but we can't do the field work because it's simply not safe in Nigeria, and it won't be safe in Nigeria for quite a long time. So it's likely now that this field work is probably going to be in 2021. We are trying to get master's students to help us initiate some of the work, but of course there's a moral challenge that if we can't go to the field, then we shouldn't be asking other colleagues in other countries to go to the field for us. So that's our very quick 10-minute run through our progress to date. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Debbie and Ben. Great to hear how the Innovation Awards are working in practice on the ground, and it's exciting to find out that they're going to be another round of funding for the end of the year, so look forward to hearing more details. We're now going to hear from Catherine Miller, who is going to be talking about the Agri-Tech Campus Round 10. And we're very much looking forward to this, I'm sure, and we'll get to take questions at the end. So over to you, Catherine.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on the Agri-Tech Catalyst. I'm Catherine Miller, and I'm Innovation Lead for Food and Nutrition at Innovate UK. The UK Government's Agri-Tech strategy was launched in 2013 with the aims of improving the translation of research into practical application for agriculture and related industries in the UK and overseas. This was an investment of £160 million, which funded 4 Agri-Tech Centres for Innovation and the Agri-Tech Catalyst. This was looking at funding translational research, and it also included funding from the Department for International Development to fund projects related to international development. The government investment in the Agri-Tech Catalyst was a total of £70 million. The Catalyst has funded over 150 projects to date, and these are industry and research collaborative projects to improve the translation of research into those practical applications. £10 million of this £70 million was from the Department for International Development, and a further £10 million has also been received since then to fund further projects since 2018. DFID has funded the Agri-Tech Catalyst since 2013 across 9 competition rounds to fund projects for UK organisations to work with organisations in developing countries. And since round 7, the focus has been on Africa. 58 projects have been funded, 53 of those in Africa, and this has delivered over £20 million worth of grant funding across 13 African countries. Round 9 projects haven't been announced yet, but will fund a further 13 projects and provide an additional £6 million worth of funding. The scope of the Agri-Tech Catalyst is broad. Projects must show the potential to deliver impact in Africa through the uptake of agricultural and food systems technology and innovation. The scope of the Catalyst covers primary crop and livestock production and aquaculture, non-food uses of crops, challenges in downstream food processing, distribution, and also storage and value addition, and improving the availability and accessibility of safe, healthy and nutritious. The funding for the Agri-Tech Catalyst is Official Development Assistance, or ODA funding, and this is defined as funding that flows to countries and territories on the DAC list of ODA recipients. Only research directly and primarily relevant to the problems of developing countries can be counted as ODA funding. And because of that, ODA eligibility is a key component of the assessment process, and you will be asked questions on this in your application. So applications must clearly demonstrate how you propose to work on the project and how it will benefit agriculture and food systems in Africa, and how you will deliver this benefit. There can be benefits to the UK as secondary benefits, so for example for UK companies and researchers, but it has to be secondary in nature. And also any activities carried out within the project must be clearly to address the challenges in Africa and not for the UK market. So here are some examples of projects, the types of projects that we funded through the Agri-Tech Catalyst so far. So of the 58 projects we funded through the Agri-Tech Catalyst, the scope has been very broad, covering research and innovation in agriculture, food systems and nutrition. Projects are focused on things like control of crop pests and disease, adding value to waste, reducing food losses in the supply chain and improving food safety. We've also funded projects looking at non-food uses of crops, improving productivity for smallholder farmers and to tackle livestock disease, for example, vaccinations. This shows the key points around the eligibility criteria. So all projects must be collaborative. They must include a partner from an eligible African country and from the UK. Early stage and mid-stage projects as a minimum must include one business, either from the UK or from one of the African countries that are eligible. For late stage projects, they must include at least 2 businesses, one African and one from the UK. Projects are carried out using a hub and spoke model, so you must have a UK-based administrative lead who will claim the funds for all partners and then distribute as needed. Project work must be carried out in the UK or in the African country or in both. And as I said, you must include at least one business in the consortium for early and mid-stage and 2 for late stage. Project costs vary depending on the stage of research. So early stage feasibility projects can be from £100,000 to £500,000 in size and last from 12 to 18 months. Mid-stage industrial research can be from £250,000 to £1 million projects and last up to 3 years. And late-stage experimental development projects can be £150,000 up to £800,000 and last up to 18 months. And projects should start by the 1st of April. This slide shows you the eligible African countries that can apply for funding through the Agritech Catalyst. If you are from a country that is not listed here, you can still take part in the Agritech Catalyst and you can still be part of a project. However, you would still need to include a UK and an eligible African partner in your consortium. The amount of grant that you're able to claim for your project depends on the size of your business and the stage your research is at. So for early stage feasibility studies and industrial research awards, you could get up to 70% of your eligible project costs if you're a micro or small business. And the grant rates decrease the larger your business is. So for a large business, you would be eligible for 50% of your costs. For experimental development projects which are nearer to market, you could get up to 45% of eligible costs if you are a micro or small business, and that rate goes down to 25% if you're a large business. And the grant rates are the same for UK and African businesses. Research organisations can participate in early and mid-stage projects, and research organisations can claim 100% of their costs for participation in these. UK universities can claim 100%, which is 80% of full economic costs, and African universities can claim 100% of their project costs. However, the total cost for your research partners must not exceed 50% of the total project costs. If your consortium contains more than one research organisation, this maximum of 50% will be shared between them. For late-stage experimental development projects, research-based partners cannot claim funding but can participate as subcontractors. And public sector organisations and charities can claim 100% of their project costs. I'm going to very briefly cover the application process for those of you who haven't applied for funding through this route previously, but there will be a separate webinar nearer the open date of the competition, which will go through this in a lot more detail, so I'd urge you to watch that nearer the time. We have an online service known as the Innovation Funding Service, or IFS, where you can apply for funding. You'll be asked to provide information on the application team, so who are the partners involved in the project. The lead will be able to invite collaborators to add information to the application, and you'll also be able to invite colleagues from your own organisation to help you complete it. You'll be asked application details, for example, the research category you're applying for, innovation area, the title and the length of your project. You'll be asked to provide a short summary and also provide a public description, and this is published if you are successful. And the scope of the project, you need to explain how your project aligns with the scope of the competition. And if it's not in line with the competition scope, then your project will not be assessed. You will then be asked 11 questions about your project, and this covers a range of areas, including the business opportunity, what project results you'd expect to see, technical approach and the innovation, any risks that you foresee and the project team, and some other areas. Two main areas of focus are around official development assistance and the International Development Act, so asking you how your project fits with both of these. As a summary, this just gives you the key information for the competition. So £2 to £3 million is likely to be available across these 3 strands, early, mid and late stage. The competition is due to open on the 20th of July 2020 and close on the 21st of October 2020. Projects should start by the 1st of April in 2021. We're also holding 3 collaboration webinars, and the provisional date for these is the 9th of July this year. And these are looking at different themes. So they are looking at crop, livestock, and food systems and nutrition. So if you're interested in a project in one of those particular themes, you can join the webinar, find out a little bit more information and hear from a case study, and also have targeted networking with others who are interested in the same theme. And the link on here just gives you the link to the Innovate UK competition page, where the full information will be published at the end of June. If you have any queries, we have a support line, both a phone number and an email address. I'd urge you as well to contact Knowledge Transfer Network on any specific questions around partnering and collaboration or filling in your application, and also have a look at the Innovate UK website. Thank you very much. I hope that has provided you with an overview of the Agritech Catalyst. There will also be a competition briefing nearer the time, which again will go into very high levels of detail around the application process. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Catherine, for your presentation. Great to hear about the Agritech Catalyst 10, and I'm sure there'll be many people that are keen to find out a bit more about it and are already thinking about ideas to apply for it. We are now going to hand over to Richard Lamb, who's also from Innovate UK, and will be letting us know a little bit about the knowledge transfer partnerships which are also running within this programme. So over to you, Richard.
Hello there, my name's Richard Lamb. I'm the KTP Programme Manager at Innovate UK. I've been asked to talk today about the Africa AgriFood KTP, which we are delivering in conjunction with our colleagues in the KTN and the Agri team at Innovate. So our programme is funded through Global Challenges Research Fund, and the money that we have for KTP is part of a much wider programme of activity that is being run through innovation, focusing on agri-food in Africa. KTPs have been around for a long time. We've been running it for the programme for 45 years here in the UK. And KTPs are a partnership between businesses with an idea they want to grow, but they don't know how to do it. Our universities and research organisations partner with those businesses to come up with a plan, an idea of how you can solve this challenge that the business is facing, and we support that through our knowledge transfer advisors who are based at the KTN. Together, the university, the business and our knowledge transfer advisors put together a project proposal which is submitted to Innovate, and if funded, the university then employs an associate, a graduate who is skilled in the area that the business needs, and they act as the conduit that pulls the information from the university into the business and helps the business embed that knowledge and learn. So they're not just learning, they're not just given a fish, as it were, they're taught how to fish. One of the unique features of KTP is that the university employs the associate, but they spend most, if not all, of their time in the business. In Africa, we're going to try and replicate the model. We want to reflect the local nature of the challenges that are faced in our target countries. So what we are doing is we are bringing together a UK university with an in-country university in one of our target areas, and they are partnering with a business with a challenge. Again, if successful, if funding is approved, the university in the host country will employ the graduate and they will spend most of their time in the business. We have knowledge transfer advisors that are helping develop this process with the UK universities, and we are using another initiative that is happening within the KTN to embed knowledge transfer advisors in each of our target countries. So our pilot countries are Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya and South Africa. So if you are a business or a university or research organisation in any of those countries, and the business has a challenge and you think you can help them, if you partner with a UK university, or indeed if you're a UK university and you have contacts in any of those countries, we'd like to hear from you and we'll help you put a project plan together. We have about £6 million over 4 years to support about 24 projects, and we have the first applications in, and we're hoping that they will start at the end of this year. Of course, a little something has caused our planned timelines to go a little bit awry, but the applications are in, and that's a good thing. So for a 24-month project, we're anticipating a budget of £250,000, which will be split 50-50 between the UK and the African university partners. We are looking to enhance the KTP model and enhancing the reach and reputation of our organisations, which is one of the reasons we're doing this. But we are using the new funding that has come online to help provide the African KTN program to piggyback the KTPs on. Lots of acronyms that use KT, I'm afraid, in this presentation. But because we will have a support network across Africa through the Africa KTN, we feel able to help, we feel able to deliver the KTP program. And we can build on the support and knowledge that we have from the KTAs, the knowledge transfer advisors here in the UK, and develop a similar group of people in each of the countries that we are going to be working in. So the scope of your project can be quite wide-ranging. It's a whole group of food producing type projects that you can look at. There's lots more information available online. If you look at that web link at the top, that gives you a lot more information about the scope, but the general terms are there. I won't read out the full list, but basically if you're growing it, harvesting it, protecting it, processing it, or shipping it, there's probably a project there for you. What we're not looking to fund at the moment is anything to do with forestry or the growth and distribution of ornamental plants, wild catch fisheries, anything to do with horses or crops for energy production. If you think you've got a project, what we'd like you to do is have a chat with one of the knowledge transfer advisors here in the UK, and I'm going to put their contact details up in a moment, and they'll sense check what you're thinking of. And then if we think that's a good idea, we'll go forward and ask you to fill in a fact-find form where you'll flesh your idea out in a bit more detail before going on to the full submission. So this is the funding profile, £125,000 for the UK knowledge-based partner. It's obviously pays for the same things here in the UK essentially as it does in Africa. There's a really healthy travel and subsistence budget. We want to make sure that the knowledge flows both ways. Obviously we're paying for the academic time and we're paying for the university to support the project. And it's the UK university that acts as the pivot point, if you like, within the knowledge exchange process. In the African university, the additional thing is that they will employ the associate, and that's part of their budget. But essentially, there is should be enough money there to run a really good project and a really well structured project. The business doesn't need to contribute at all other than in kind, and host the associate and make sure that the associate gets the commercial exposure and the business immersion that is required as part of the project. So this is the submission process. You have an idea, you talk to the KTAs, they go yes, do a fact-find form. You submit that to the African country lead, details in a moment. They say, okay, that all makes sense. Prepare a full proposal. You work with the lead again to develop that, and you submit that into any of the current KTP competitions, identifying it as an African Agriculture KTP. It goes through the normal KTP review process. It is judged alongside every other KTP because it has to meet the same criteria in terms of knowledge exchange and knowledge transfer that we would expect of any project. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's all approved, and we normally do that approval process within about 8 weeks of the competition closing, so you're not kept hanging around for a long time. Once that decision has been made, hopefully you get the funding and a grant offer letter will be approved, and at that point the project can officially start. All the way through this, you'll be supported by the knowledge transfer advisors in the UK, and in time the African-based in-country advisors who will be there to support and monitor and mentor the projects as they grow and evolve. So the delivery model is this, that the UK university is a fund holder and fund allocator. The African university delivers the tactical, academic, scientific and technical knowledge and employs the associate, and the African business hosts the associate and provides the challenge that everyone is working on. So this is the Knowledge Transfer Network team here in the UK. So we've got Ian Blakemore and Jerry O'Hagan, who are leading on South Africa, Ken Frame, who's leading on Nigeria, Joel Ferguson, who's looking after Kenya, John Clayton, who is looking after Ghana, and we've also included Niju here, who is KTN Head of International Development and leading the development of KTN in Africa. Now that's very much a whistle-stop tour of African agriculture KTPs. If you want to know any more, contact one of these people on the screen now. But for now, my time is up. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll be around for the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Hi, well, thank you very much to our speakers. Great to hear how these funding options are available to our members. We're now going to move into the question and answer portion of this session. Firstly, just if you had any audio issues, apologies for that. Many of these recordings were done previously just to make sure we didn't have any problems in the day, but it can mean sometimes that the audio is a bit iffy, if you like. Do use the question and answer box if you're going to ask any questions. Some of those are being answered live, so you'll see those answers there, and I'll try and get through as many as we can in the next 15 minutes or so. Okay, so I think we'll start with Debbie. She's going to be answering some questions around the Innovation Awards. So perhaps, Debbie, you'd want to clarify firstly that Ben isn't here, and because there's a question specific.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that have come up for Ben. I have asked him because I've been able to get a couple of responses, so one of them I've answered live, but I guess if there's anything outstanding, it's the sort of thing I can pick up afterwards and come back to the people who are asking the questions.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Debbie. That was the sort of the clarification I was after, I think. So we can do that. So let me go to a question, Debbie, from Salah, which is she, I'm not sure who that, the first name there. Which were the 13 countries that benefited from the awards, apart from Sierra Leone, which were nominated? How will KTN access the sustainability after 2021? What is the cost of production of the CB and the cost of women's farmers? So maybe just that first bit about which countries were.
Yeah. So I think I'd certainly said that the 13 awards had been made, but it didn't actually mean that there were 30 different countries. So there was a wee bit of duplication. So we certainly had a couple of successful applications for Ghana, Kenya, South Africa. We also had another project for Tanzania, Zimbabwe and Ethiopia. So I may have missed one or two, but that roughly will give you a wee bit of a spread for the successful awards. In terms of the question about the sustainability, that side of things, that will get tracked as we go, and we will do that with our partners, with DFID and against ODA criteria. But certainly the projects will be reporting on their progress and their impact specifically on those areas, as that was our key criteria for them being successful. So it's the sort of thing that will get monitored over the next wee while, and then we'll benchmark it and see where we go from there.
Okay, thank you for that, Debbie. That was helpful. Catherine, if we come to you next, if that's okay. We've got a question here from Rebecca Lewis, which says, I noted Catherine said that African countries not on the eligible list can participate if they collaborate with an eligible country. Can they claim funding?
Yes, so they can. So other organisations from other countries can take part in Catalyst projects and can claim funding, but your project still must meet the eligibility criteria. So you still must have a partner from one of the eligible African countries that were listed, and you must have your eligible UK partner. And the project must be for the benefit of one of those eligible African countries. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, that does. Thanks, Catherine. Just whilst we're staying with you, is the available funding for the Agritech Catalyst lower for this cycle?
Yes, so the Agritech Catalyst funding is likely to be 3 million for this round, which for the last round it was 5 million, but we do have another round, 11, which is likely to launch next year. So yes, there is slightly less funding, and just linking to that, I think there was another question around the number of projects. So we probably look to fund sort of 8 to 10 projects through this funding.
Thank you for that, Catherine. And just staying with you, that question on the number of applications was helpful, but Job Oyebisi also wants to know if you can make a sample available of a successful application.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. We don't make sort of sample applications available in terms of real life applications, because a lot of them are obviously commercially sensitive and can contain a lot of commercially sensitive information. But the KTN do have a sort of guidance document for each of the questions, and sort of the tips for answering questions on the business proposition, the team, various different things. So that's available online. So I'm sure we can send the link round that will hopefully help with that.
Thanks, Catherine. That's very helpful. Can I come to Richard next? We have a... Oh no, sorry. Staying with you, Catherine. My apologies for that. This is from Daya. Can university lead the Agritech Catalyst 10 call, or is this where it must be led by an industry?
So early stage projects can be led by universities or research and technology organisations. Industrial research have to be led by industry, so those are more industry-led projects anyway. And experimental development projects, academics can't be a partner, but they can take part as a subcontractor if that project needs particular expertise from an academic organisation. So really it depends which stage you're at, whether it's early stage feasibility, whether it's sort of your mid-stage industrial research or late stage experimental development. But if you have a look online, the Agritech Catalyst Round 9 competition briefs are already up there, so you can see the eligibility criteria for each of those in more detail.
That's great, thanks, Catherine. I should mention as well that this recording will be put onto YouTube following the end of the session, likely depending on when our team can get it up, but perhaps tomorrow or the day after. So you should have access to this, and you can rewatch if you have any points you want to come back to. We are also running some other briefing events, but I'd let Catherine tell you about those. Just a question, Catherine, for you. For the Agritech Catalyst, is it possible to have back-to-back early phase projects? The match funding requirement for mid-stage is quite a step up and may not be possible immediately after the first 18-month project.
So the match funding for the mid-stage industrial research is the same as early stage. So there isn't a jump there between early and mid-stage. There is between mid-stage and your late-stage experimental development. So just to clarify that. But also, you know, if you have another early-stage feasibility study, then you can apply for that project in a successive round as well.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. I think this is directed at you. Does the UK knowledge, Catherine, that is, sorry, does UK knowledge-based partner have to be a university? Can research institutions play this role?
I think it
Yes.
might be. Yeah.
Oh.
So, I mean, I was going to say it sounds like a KTP question to him,
Okay,
but in both cases the answer is yes.
That was nice and straightforward. Thank you. The questions are coming in thick and fast, so bear with me a moment. Yeah, we've had that. There's a follow-up question from Christopher, but Debbie will take that one because it's regarding the cassava project, and Ben's not here at the moment, so I'll give that one to you.
Yep.
And another one from Victor about preservation after peeling. A comment here from Frank about food loss post-farm gate. It's actually the bane of Nigerian agriculture. I think we can agree that this is a challenge for the agri-food sector. How may one start, since this is a huge aspect of the farming? Well, I mean, I might take that one if that's okay. Frank, I would just, I think there are certainly challenges with loss post-farm gate. And there's lots of interesting technologies that are trying to deal with that. One of the things you might want to go to is the networking sessions. You can sort of find like-minded people there who maybe have technology that you might want to partner with. So that's certainly a challenge, and one that the Agri-Tech Catalyst would fund if there was a project in scope. Let me go to another question. So this is from Ben. Does KTP and Agri-Tech Catalyst facilitate partnership brokerage in identifying UK universities? So that one's for Richard. Richard, you?
I think Richard's just dropped off the line. I think he's just gone.
Yeah, he may have had some. Sorry, I missed that. I think Jane's going to try and answer that one.
Once I unmute, I think that we can do. Obviously, we'll speak on Richard's behalf, but if in doubt, always just drop us a line and we'll see if we can help. I think is the best way to look at that, Tim.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And Jane Brookman leads this program. I should just mention in case you're not sure who's speaking.
Richard's back now. So.
Oh, Richard, did you?
Sorry, my
no,
connection dropped out.
These things happen. We did have a question from Ben Ovio, just asking about, does KTP and Agri-Tech Catalyst facilitate partnership brokerage in identifying UK universities?
No, I'm afraid we don't. We need you to come to us with the idea. We can help you shape that idea, but we need you to pull that together. Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. What were the past challenges of KTN to fund? I guess perhaps that's referencing the Innovation Awards, but Debbie, did you want to talk about that? About some of what's in scope for the Innovation Awards?
Past challenges of KTN to fund. Not totally understanding the question, but there were certainly a couple of exclusions in terms of what we couldn't fund, and that was forestry or ornamentals, wild capture fisheries, equine or crops for energy production. So we had been quite specific about the scope and the eligibility going forward, but it was very, very much about livestock and creating a good food supply, safe, nutritious, and ultimately encouraging alleviating poverty, but health and wealth as well. So,
yeah, I mean, very much aligned to the Agri-Tech Catalyst 10 in terms of scope. We wanted to ensure that they were complementary, didn't they? So yeah, the question for Victor here for Catherine. Can the Catalyst Fund be used to encourage a knowledge transfer startup where no company currently exists in that area? And he's given an example of developing seed or seedlings for indigenous crops.
So we don't fund particular businesses as such. I guess you need to have a project. So if you have a research and innovation project that involves a startup in a particular area that's in scope, then yes, we would be open to funding that. I think if I understand the question right, but we wouldn't sort of fund the startup of a particular company. It would need to be already a company. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Question here from Sandra Hill. Do the companies have to be a certain size for the KTN? Debbie, did you want to answer that one for us?
Yeah, is that for the Innovation Awards? It can be an SME or it can be a large African partner. Hope that answers the question. Obviously, it's academic, it's university, UK based, it's university or an RTO, but certainly from an African point of view, it can be any size industry partner.
And did you, perhaps, I'll bring Jane in on this one, just a question here about facilitating partnerships, because that's come up again from Adekun. I'm sorry, I'm not going to try and pronounce your name because I think I wouldn't do it justice, but can KTN facilitate partnership between African universities and the UK universities? Jane, would you be able to answer that one?
We can try our best. Yes, we can. I mean, there's a couple of ways of doing that. So if you've got, if you want to go through the Meeting Mojo, that's one option, or going through the pitches, that's another option. But then on an individual level, if there's something that you're looking for, particular capability, or you're trying to advertise that you've got a particular capability, we can try our best to encourage that, and also perhaps using the LinkedIn group as well. So, you know, give us a call and we'll see what we can do to help, or an email. Thanks,
Jane. One last question, perhaps. I think we're starting to run slightly short on time. We can take a few more. Must the project go through a university before it gets approved for the funding? I presume that's talking about the KTPs. So, Richard?
Yes, to have the partnership as we've described it, so it needs to be an in-country university and business from one of those 4 target countries that we're looking to work in, and it must be partnered with a UK university.
Thank you, Richard.
Or a research organisation in the UK, of course, or in one of the partner countries.
Great, thank you. One for Catherine, I believe. Just please throw more light on the counterpart funding.
Yeah, so if you are a business, you won't be funded 100%. So you will get the grant rate that you receive will depend on the size of the business. So as an example, if you are an SME, whether that's an Africa-based SME or a UK-based SME, you would get 70% grant for an early or mid-stage project. So that means that you need to have funding to be able to deliver the remaining 30% of the project. So that's sort of how it works. Just as an example, if, for example, you had £1,000 worth of materials that you had an invoice for that amount, you would be able to claim £700 as grant, and you would need to pay the remaining £300 from your business yourself. So I hope that sort of covers that.
Yeah, that's great. One from Salah here. Do you get any backing from the African governments when it comes to funding SMEs or research organisations? I presume that's for Catherine.
No, not specifically. I mean, this is a UK government fund, so the funding is from UK government, not from sort of African government.
One from Victoria, just asking, are UK government research organisations eligible for any of these funding programmes? Perhaps Richard and Catherine could answer that one. So Catherine first.
Yes, for the AgriTech Catalyst, they are eligible.
And yes, for KTP, as long as you register as a KTP knowledge base.
That's great, thank you. If one has a working relationship with farmer groups, but not linked to a research organisation, would they be eligible to access funding? So I guess perhaps Richard answer for the KTP, if you would, and then we'll go to Catherine.
Yeah, it's you need to kind of broker that relationship for yourself. If it's the nature of the structure of our funding that we require, so in this case, a farmers group to be working with a university or research organisation in one of our pilot countries, and then you need to be partnering with a UK university as well. So as it's described there, probably not for KTP.
Thank you. That's helpful. And Catherine, could you pick that one up?
For the Agritech Catalyst, I mean, it depends. If it is, for example, sort of a cooperative, then they may be eligible. It depends sort of what the actual entity is. You know, is it working as a cooperative? Is it working as a business? What is that sort of setup? What I would do is pop an email into the support line if you've got a project idea with a particular consortium, and we can look at that.
That's great, thank you. One last one from Frank, and then we've got a question from Ben, which I'll address. So a holistic approach, this should span the crop production sector. Do we take it on crop by crop basis or as a sectoral issue? I presume that's for Catherine.
Yeah, so in terms of the Agritech Catalyst, the scope is very broad. So you don't have to have a project that looks specifically at one crop. It could be across a range of different crops. So it could be a particular technology that might help with, I don't know, a particular pest that affects various crops. So it is very broad. So it really depends what sort of project you want to put together.
Fantastic, thanks, Catherine. And Ben has commented, he's asking about the diversity of the Agritech Catalyst team, and it's saying it does not seem to reflect diversity. I think I would just answer to that. We, you know, at the AgriFood team at the KTN, there's 10 of us. Not all of us are present on this call. We are a diverse bunch of people, but bearing in mind we do still work in the UK, and whilst this is an African programme, the work has started from a UK perspective, which is still predominantly a white country. So therefore, I think we do reflect the diversity as much as we can, though we are also a diverse team. I would answer that. And obviously, yes.
Tim, there's another point as well, I think, that we should make, is that we're setting up, through other funding mechanisms, local support, certainly in the countries that KTP are going to be active in. Mm-hmm. So the people that you saw on my slides are there to support and help embed that local support. Yeah. And I think that's an important characteristic of what we're trying to do, because certainly in KTP, what we would very much like to do is help the countries that we're working in. We want to demonstrate the usefulness of the KTP model and hopefully persuade other countries to create their own version of KTP if they felt that it would work for them. So I would see that we're trying to help facilitate in that regard.
Thank you.
To add to that, Tim, I did answer Ben's question by text as well, and I think the other point that's it's a fair enough comment. However, I would say that KTN takes both its diversity and its gender balance extremely seriously, and what I would say is that we do work towards trying to equalise that and to reflect the population of the country that we live in, which is Tim's point. And also, I think the gender balance is actually probably slightly more females work in KTN than males. And I also put on there about Richard's point as well, which is that there will be a mixture of seconded staff and locally employed staff at the KTN offices throughout Africa.
That's great. Thanks, Jane. And it's obviously an important point to raise, and we are very aware of it. So thank you for asking that question, Ben. I think that draws to a close today's session. We're just around about on time. If you do have any other points that you want to raise or any questions to follow up, then do contact us. But like I said, this recording will be available on YouTube and Facebook, and so you can access the material there. So thank you very much for attending. And it's a pleasure to talk to most of you and all of you. Thank you very much. Bye.